All right. Well, welcome everyone to Alaska Startup Week 2021. We're really excited to have a really amazing panel today and discussion on makerspaces here in Alaska. Makerspaces, I think, to many of us is still an up-and-coming new thing. And, what better way than to bring it together today here from the Fairbanks team. I want to thank Peter for helping out, and then, of course, our wonderful panelists and the three institutions that we're working with today. Will be eCampus, UAF eCampus, the T3 Alliance, Makerspace, and also One Tree, Alaska. So we're excited to do that. Real quick, before we begin, I'd also like to acknowledge the land that we're currently residing on, traditional lands of the Dene people, the Lower Tana River, and want to thank them for their past, present, and future caretaking of this land. And, for us here all in Fairbanks, that's what it is. So let's get started. So real quick, who am I and who's Peter? We're the UAF Center ICE team, and we are based here on campus, working with you and entrepreneurs, innovators across Alaska on business ideas and kind of getting students also involved with this experience of how do you create a startup, in that sense. And Makerspaces are a great place for that to begin with. And so we thought it'd be a great idea to bring together folks who are involved with Makerspaces today. So any questions on Center ICE, feel free to reach out to myself or Peter. And you can find more information about us online at UAF Center ICE. So today's event, we're going to be learning about Makerspaces, as I mentioned, and three of them. We're also going to watch a few quick videos.
Video drop. Pull up from my side because it looks like it's video's dropped. Apologies, everybody. I don't have the file from Kevin. Kevin, looks like your audio. There we go. Let's see if he gets back in. And then we'll get kicked off. So apologies for the video connection failure. We'll get the videos up and running. Maybe while we wait for Kevin to bring them in, maybe Nathan, you can we can talk about the three programs we have here today before the videos come up. So maybe Nathan, you can talk about the Makerspace that you've been building up and developing at eCampus, and then we can move around to Adam and then to Jan as Kevin logs back in. So maybe over to you, Nathan, to do a little overview of the Makerspace that you're building up. So over to you first.
Sure, thanks, Peter. So the eMakerspace is a website in practical terms, and you'll hear this in the video as well. Unfortunately, I narrated the video and I'm going to be talking to you, so that's going to be a little weird, but we'll just go with it for now. So what's not in the video is kind of the impetus for making the eMakerspace, and especially right now, is that I work as an instructional designer at eCampus, and going through COVID, we had to move a lot of people online, maybe didn't want to be online. None of us wanted to be isolated from our students, but that's where we were. So a lot of people moved online, and the default was to use the online classroom and the online platform as kind of a repository for information. And students were getting this really consumerist vibe from all of their courses, in which they have long video playlists and reading lists, and maybe there's a little bit of active engagement, but there's nothing really creative or creating or making in those courses, even though students, on the other side of any course is a student on a computer, and the computer is one of the most flexible and creative tools humans have ever invented. But we rarely take advantage of that in an online educational setting. So the eMakerspace is a space to kind of explore that, try and inspire people to take advantage of that more, and also put out some examples, because it's hard to find which tools and how to incorporate it. So it's just trying to make that a little bit easier and open a community dialogue about that.
Right, yeah, I think sometimes it's just getting those inspirations, those ideas going in people's minds and brains. And I think the sort of makerspace I always think of, take the word makerspace and flip it and say it's space to make things. And it's a space to just think outside your box, your traditional box, to look at some ideas that you can then look at solutions to, whether it's a need or a challenge. And there are lots of great tools to allow you to do that out there. And it's knowing how to use those effectively, so you're not then blocked by the tool that's available for you to make that happen. You've got some understanding of how to apply that to your problem, so you can then start thinking in a design thinking approach, and you're not sort of flummoxed by the tool. You're not stuck because the system you're using, whether it's an online software system or a hands-on physical product, that doesn't block you from your ability to get inspired and to think and to actually approach the challenge that you've got from a new mindset. For me, giving people those tools so they can use them and understand which are the most appropriate means that you can then actually start getting people inspired to look at building out some solutions to community or to societal challenges where you're not impacted. So that's great. Adam, over to you, because I know that sort of mindset resonates with everybody, but a little bit about the T3 space that you've built up as a makerspace approach, following on that similar philosophy, but from a physical setting rather than a virtual setting, as Nathan was pointing.
Yeah, and I love the work that the e-makerspace represents, because a lot of us are stuck in a situation where I'm at home, I don't have the ability to lean out and do stuff, and creativity is really at that core there. In the T3 Alliance Makerspace and in the T3 Alliance backstory, there's three core principles. The first is you need to maintain a growth mindset and be in a safe learning environment. And a safe learning environment, whether that's on a digital space or whether that's in an actual room with other people around, when you have a failure, a moment where something doesn't work the way that you think it should, that's either a moment where you can reframe it and say, there's a learning opportunity, or this negative self-talk can come in where it's, oh, that just shows I'm not a maker. I'm not a creative individual like this, so I shouldn't mess around with this kind of stuff. And what we found is that setting that context and tone, and then opening up this incredible world of learning opportunities that come through technology. And it's we started with Raspberry Pis and 3D printers and laser cutters and drones, a bunch of stuff. And all this stuff in the end is something that you can play with until you feel like you can apply it to something. So that second principle of tech skills is take something and use it. And those of you who want to go to the history of technology, we know everything from a book is technology to pencils to just a telephone. That's all technology. But then the third and last pillar that we focus on is community engagement opportunities. It's great to know how to use a computer, but that computer can turn into a force of good if you apply it to make the world a better place. So to me, I try to coach the teachers or the people who work within there. And I want to recognize Shannon down here, and that's where she is on my screen, so I point down that direction. But Shannon is one of those makerspace coaches, lab managers who really has a whole group of students who are working in there in order to maintain that kind of safe learning environment, so that a new student walks in with that kind of, what do I do here? How do I be both welcome emotionally and just welcome to be there, and then also have that supportive environment where when it doesn't work out, I can reframe and work through those things. And Shannon, anything you'd like to add? Shannon has lots of experience in makerspaces and is, I'd say, a lot of engineers, and she is an engineer that turn into makers because they love tinkering and building with stuff. But I'll stop talking and let Shannon say a little bit about what.
No, I think you covered it all. That's awesome. I think just bringing back to like a way of learning that's like learning by doing and figuring it out as you go and problem solving rather than just being lectured at or told the answers or things like that is exciting and can be inspiring. We've been working with SSS as well a lot, and like students who aren't as engaged in their typical classes, when we get them in the makerspace and they feel like they can build something and do something, they start to get more engaged in their academics.
Thank you. I will say, Jan is somebody that I think she's the last person I get to hand off to, but she is what I think of as, that's the feeder that our makerspace is ready to meet up with. Because when a group of students have learned to use technology and they've learned to, feel like they have capacity to go make a difference, then what our job as makerspace managers or leaders or whatever in this area is to find those community members who have a project and a topic that is so just exciting that they can come and share that with a group of students, or share the problem sets that they're having, allow the students to empathize with them and try to think of a way that they can address that and make a difference. So I know Jan has built an awesome program throughout many years of work here, and yeah, Jan, I'm going to hand it to you and let you tell us about it.
Well, thank you. It's really great to be in this event with the particular people and programs represented, because I just find myself nodding and wanting to talk with all of us together about our overlaps. So One Tree's beginning was as a very time-limited 2-year project. And we were just going to make everything we could think of making out of a single birch tree. And it was the teachers who got involved with us that at the end of the 2 years said, you can't do this, keep going. And so everything that's followed has been because of what Shannon said, I think, about the community, and also Adam. It was a community response. And since the beginning, we were about making things and learning from the forest, as we'll see in our video. But what I just would like to say is that it is so exciting, and big thanks to Peter for connecting all of the makerspaces together, because I think we each have a slightly different niche that we fill, and that by working together, we'll be able to fill it. So I only have 2 quick things to say. We're probably ready for the videos, but one is I sort of thought, I didn't get it that could have had our fellow Jamie on as one of the speakers. And so Jamie, I want you to see that here with this lowest of technology, I could not find a pencil because we've been, putting everything away. So I'm using artist charcoal that you and I made, which is something we're making for kids. So that's just an example of a makerspace thing. And also last thing, to Adam, is we know the project now that we really want help with, because if we had your help with the printers, we could turn 1,000 perfect little pots into what we need to work with kids. So exciting to be here today. So glad to be part of this. Thank you.
Right, so we now have the videos. So in perfect order of myself, we're going to go in a different order. So we're going to have T3 video, and all being well, you can see the T3 video snapshot. And then we've got the Nathan's eCampus e-Makerspace, and then we've got Jan's one from One Tree, and then we can get into a group discussion about Makerspaces, experiences of setting up Makerspaces, problems, how people can get access to you, some of your thoughts you might have for each other, sort of the inspirations to getting those going. You sort of briefly did that as we were going through it, but really it's a chance for the rest of the hour to just have a discussion about Makerspaces in general within an academic environment, even outside an academic environment, and how we could potentially grow and build up these types of spaces across Alaska to be a place for inspiration from all age ranges, K through 12, K through 16 and beyond, because it doesn't stop as we get out of the academic environment. We all are inspired to build and develop some capabilities that can help us as living in Alaska to grow and benefit the state, so we can have a prosperous place for us all to live and work. So on that note, all being well, you'll hear the video from the T3 presentation. So over to them.
We can foster a sense of growth mindset,
give access to technology that can build the kinds of skills needed in order to participate in a community engagement project.
The Makerspace is a fun environment where we can bring creativity, play, and real-world problem-solving back into learning. We want to make it a space where students can explore and make together at the intersections between technology, science, art, and culture.
Just learning different skills from other students has been really meaningful for me. And also just connecting with people after being in isolation for a while. So I really like this space, and I really like meeting different kinds of people, especially getting to know other students here at UAF. And this is a great place to do that.
And one of the things that I've really learned about, or learned from making, is that it's okay to be wrong, and it's okay to fail, and it's okay to fail over and over and over again. Because when you fail, you inevitably learn something every single time.
I like the T3 Alliance Makerspace because it's a fun environment to think about making things and have a more hands-on experience than I do in a lot of my classes. And it's fun to work in a more collaborative environment.
One of the things I think is really exciting about the Makerspace here is that we've been able to hire T3 Alliance Makerspace Lab Techs. And it's a position that we've made available through shared partnerships between the engineering program, the Climate Scholars program, the Upward Bound program. And these lab techs understand the design thinking process. They understand and know how to practice and watch out for a growth mindset. Our UAF Makerspace is the center of a hub and spoke model connecting 160 Upward Bound students in 10 high schools throughout rural Alaska. These Upward Bound communities have similar equipment in their makerspaces, allowing for collaboration and mentorship to happen throughout the network. Students in Seward, Chivak, and Kipnuk learned to fly drones and map their communities. Students in Wrangell built an automated greenhouse. Students in Nikiski worked on water quality issues, while students in Shishmaref used an underwater rover to look under the sea ice.
I see nothing but growth for spaces like this. The ability to have a safe space for students to create with their minds and with their hands and interact together is the way of the future.
Thanks. Great, wonderful. Thanks for that, Adam and the team. I heard some very familiar voices there in the background as they were talking and presenting on the different types of makerspaces. So I'm going to pass it back over to Kevin to share the videos from Jan and Nathan. So over to Nathan's and back over to you, Kevin.
Sounds good. Great. We're back on now. Nathan, we'll have you I'll play your video now on the eMakerspace.
The audio doesn't seem to be sharing. There's those two boxes at the bottom of the share screen, one the share sound and optimize for video that can be helpful.
Welcome to the eMakerspace. Our mission is to broaden the field of creative online learning activities and inspire instructors and students to see the internet as a place of making. In practical terms, it is a website that houses a short list of some online creative tools, a few tutorials called challenges, and a gallery for participants to share their work. The tool list draws from the world of indie game development and is inspired by the idea of casual creation. The idea that the process of creating online can be low stakes and more important than reaching a final product. These tools are also selected for their limited functionality, because by doing only a few things, they are more intuitive and less overwhelming to new users. Highly scaffolded and bite-sized, our challenges model creative online tool incorporation while keeping cognitive load on the user low. The eMakerspace challenges are geared towards making creative online learning more accessible. From working with instructors, we found that many couldn't access more creative assignments because it took too much time to find and learn a new tool. This is where the challenges come in. Our first challenge that launched in October and is available now is called System Shapes. It uses a custom-built interface called Bubbles to guide visitors through mapping and seeing the complex systems we work within every day as shapes. The open challenge at the end asks visitors to map a system of their own. The last piece of the Makerspace is the gallery. At the end of each challenge, visitors are invited to share their work for others to see. For the first 5 challenges, we are running a best of show competition, where any University of Alaska visitor who completes a challenge and shares their work through the gallery before the challenge deadline can win and have their work as the featured image for that challenge. Interested in finding out more? Come visit the eMakerspace and see what you can make.
Well, awesome. I hope, sorry for the technical difficulties. I hope you guys are able to watch it a little bit. Go ahead and move on to the next one. Here we go. And then lastly, we're going to have Jan's video real quick from One Tree. And we're going to bring that up real quick. Let's see. Stop sharing. Oh.
From the beginning, One Tree Alaska has had 2 focus areas, learning from the forest and developing forest products. In One Tree's case, forest product development often involves downsizing large-scale commercial technologies to an appropriate size for engaging small producers and entrepreneurs.
Taken as a whole, this collage illustrates the design cycle, which occurs within a variety of makerspaces.
Hey, Kevin, I think you've got some
in the One
boxes
Tree
covering
Alaska
over the
STEAM
video.
Studio, the activities of designing bring together process and product.
Our roots are in a STEM to STEAM philosophy, which brings together educators, scientists, and artists.
Sorry, is that working now? I'm sorry. Better?
Yeah, it's better. I think those Zoom windows kind of cover the video for some reason. I'm not sure if it's just based on
in a community of
how
lifelong
working,
learners who work collaboratively to create sustainable relationships between humans and forests in a time of rapid environmental change.
The first pivot experienced by One Tree Alaska moved the program from a collection of educational activities based on a STEM to STEAM philosophy to an embodied makerspace in the Lola Tilley Commons building. As a boreal forest makerspace, The Tilly fosters entrepreneurship and the development of small-scale forest products.
Depending on the time of year, the focus of our work in the Tilly Makerspace and K-12 classrooms changes. In autumn, we explore the many steps by which birch trees wind down from the summer growing season and prepare to enter dormancy. The process typically takes 4 to 5 weeks. In winter, we conduct germination trials with that year's birch seed crop collected from individual trees in our research garden in the tea field. Students visiting the Tilly Makerspace document weekly changes in the seedlings prior to their being planted out.
In spring, we harvest thousands of gallons of birch sap with participants in the Fairbanks Birch Sap Cooperative. Our spring curriculum unit also examines the process by which birch trees release from winter dormancy and move toward green-up, a process that typically takes around 3 weeks of accumulating degree days above freezing.
The COVID-19 pandemic brought about One Tree's second programmatic pivot, development of home tapping kits for K-12 families and neighborhood teams. That pivot has proven quite significant. It more than quadrupled the number of people directly involved in tapping and stimulated the development of several new birch sap products by One Tree in partnership with area retail outlets, breweries, and distilleries. Rounding out our yearly work plan, in summer, it's full steam ahead as we observe the daily changes in the juvenile birch trees growing in the Generation 1 tree research garden in the tea field on campus. Although our work plan changes monthly to correspond to elements in the tree's annual life cycle, what connects all these seasonal activities together is use of the One Tree Alaska STEAM Journal, a tool for lifelong inquiry.
Here is an example of a One Tree Alaska STEAM journal developed during a summer 2-week STEAM intensive training. The facing pages are used to record field observations. On the left-hand page, a format is used to record time, date, and field observations. On the right side, a blank page is used to sketch and label what has been observed that day and record additional notes.
While the previous slide showed an example of an adult learner's STEAM journal, this slide shows a template developed by second graders at Ann Ween Elementary School. The students used templates developed by One Tree staff throughout the fall and winter, but by spring, they decided they had enough experience to develop a template of their own. Their How to Choose a Birch Tree, Sap Tree template asks age-appropriate questions and was enthusiastically adopted the following year by students at an elementary school across town. Student-driven design and peer teaching can create powerful motivations for improved STEM teaching and learning at all levels. If you would like to learn more about our approach, please consider taking our Spring 2022 One Tree Alaska STEAM Journal Workshop. We look forward to welcoming you to the One Tree Alaska STEM to STEAM studio on campus. Please get in touch to schedule a visit, and many thanks for your attention to this presentation.
Thank everybody for your videos and sort of the philosophies behind what you're doing with your makerspaces and where you're looking to go, and the opportunities that you have for people to connect and to sort of collaborate with you. I guess maybe to Nathan, you highlighted the sort of project that you've got going on right now. Sort of how can sort of people, like, how do they submit? How do they connect with you? What are ways, what might be coming? What are sort of some inspirations that got you to get started, and sort of what are you looking for in terms of this ongoing project you have right now?
Sure, thanks for asking. So one, I'm a big fan of Jan. I didn't say that in the beginning, but I had a good friend who worked with Jan in the sap, processing birch sap. And so I've known Jan for a while. And then I just met Adam maybe last year. And we worked together on the Engineering 101 course that now uses that Makerspace and is all part of that. So it's, again, like Jan said, super fun to be in this room with everybody. Yeah, so the eMakerspace is very young compared to the institutions really that Jan and Adam have going on. It's still I'm pretty open with it. I mean, I work with 2 other designers on kind of moving things forward, but then we're also open to other people coming in and making challenges, or if people are developing web tools that they think would be interesting to see in an educational sphere, to work with them to make challenges that then people can try out and be inspired by that tool and potentially incorporate into their course or just something they're doing online. For system shapes, which is our first challenge, and the challenges are really, I guess, when making the eMakerspace, the challenges are what make it more than just a resource or a repository of these are the tools you could use. The challenges say, hey, this is an idea of how to use them, and we're just going to take like 10 minutes of your time to try it out. So anybody right now, and I could even share my screen and jump over there, is you go into emakerspace.community.uaf.edu, very long URL, but the challenges area has a link for system shapes, and you can go on there and it walks you through the whole challenge. And at the end, there's a little button to actually share whatever you make, because there's an open challenge at the end with other people. And we've seen some interesting creations. One instructor mapped their course, and really the impetus for system shapes was, as a course designer, as someone who works in online courses a lot, oftentimes, and also who took a lot of online courses as a student, we get this relationship somewhere that concepts are linear, so that knowledge domains are linear, in that what they teach in the first week is related to the second week because it comes after, not because they're related conceptually. And so the idea of these system shapes and knowledge networks is to give students another way to look at the domain of knowledge. And so it was trying to get to that, but also knowing that that's not its only use. This tool can be used for a lot of other things. I actually enjoyed just playing with it and seeing the cool things that can come out of it. In the challenge, it's kind of riddles to try and make these different system shapes. And then in the answer, it tells you a little bit about what those shapes are like. For instance, a branching shape, in a system can often be something where there's a correct answer and a wrong answer. So you want to get to the end or the correct answer. And there may be a lot of branches off of the main path that you can take that lead to dead ends. Alternatively, you could also see that branching shape as giving students more agency, or whoever's using whatever you're doing. So it's more choice. They can branch and you can get to multiple different positive, correct endpoints. And so seeing those and making those can kind of give you this intuitive sense of what's going on, especially in a digital space where things can be all over the place and navigation can be a little interesting. Giving some visuals is helpful. So that's where system shapes came from. The next one that we're working on, it's done, but it's not up yet, is called Squiggles. And it's about the imperfect nature of the human to computer interface. And it uses a little drawing pad that you can make animations with, essentially, and asks people to make these simple animations and then to kind of build in a mindfulness practice to make a symbol or an icon that represents their teaching or learning and animate it. And again, it's a very low functioning tool. So it's this practice in being really finding your expectations for a tool and what it can and cannot do before you actually try and use it to do something, which again, we find pretty frequently in the education sphere that people get very frustrated with that. So I'm not sure if I answered all of the questions, but.
Oh, you did. And actually what intrigues me, and then I'll jump to Jan and Adam to maybe talk a little bit more about some projects that have either spun out of their spaces or new things coming. But what intrigued me was what you were saying with the branches system is, and that sometimes you need to go down one avenue to find out that that's not going to work, but that there may be multiple avenues you can go down to get to a final solution. That's the idea of like this ideation, this phase, is that there will be paths you go down when you're looking to develop some physical solution, so not in a virtual, but in a physical sense, that you need to test. And you're like, nope, that's not going to work. But then the final solution that you end up with could be one of a multitude of solutions. And it's finding that you go, and it's like, okay, you ended up with solution A, solution B also worked, but you chose solution A because of some reason, something behind it. And understanding that as in the entrepreneurial and the innovation space, as you're listening to your end user, whether it's a community member or if it's a business or an industry, is that they've got an idea of what they'd like to see. You've got an idea of what you can generate. And it could be that in the ending solution may be different from both of your original assumptions. But in the end, you're building something that you can produce and they would want as a must have, or rather than a nice to have. But that initial idea that they want and that initial idea that you have may not be the ending solution, because you find that point where you can reach, and it's being aware that there are multiple solutions you can get to, but there are also avenues you have to go down to test, and you have to evaluate, and you have to try, you have to go through a risky potential venture, because you need to test something to make sure that you've evaluated all possible solutions. Some of them will all work, some of them work, some of them won't, and then you go with the one that is the most effective or for your particular challenge. But you could end up with different. One person may end up with a different solution than another one. They both are effective. They're both going to work. It's just which one works gets selected. So interesting to see that in a virtual approach, as well as that sort of mindset in the ideation world and in the business world, where you're doing your discovery, you're ideating, you're pivoting, you're changing, and you eventually get down this multitude of options, and you get to the one that then might be the selected solution, even if there's a group of solutions that could work. Yeah, and thank you for expounding upon that, because it shows that at least how I explained it, you got it, so that's good. Also, Shannon had a question here. I don't know if you wanted to unmute and ask it, Shannon, but also we could just pull it from the chat.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, so your space is all like online, which is like it might be harder or it might be easier to have like a community of collaboration and curiosity and things like that. And we're trying to do a somewhat similar thing by connecting makerspaces throughout Alaska, and those interactions are mostly going to be online. So how do we like carry a culture into the online setting and make sure we still kind of have those community values and things? Yeah. Oh man, I've definitely talked to Adam about this, and Discord was heavy in that conversation. Because for the eMakerspace right now, we haven't added that additional community part. We've been working on just getting the list out, getting these challenges out, and trying to get interest in there. I honestly feel like it would make a lot of sense to partner with physical makerspaces that already have existing communities and just kind of become a digital piece of that. And again, this makerspace is very new, so it's very open to changing and being defined in that way. So that would be great to talk more about that and see if that's an option in the future.
Yeah, I concur. I totally think what I love about seeing the way that your eMakerspace works there is that it makes different ways of thinking come alive. So often students are, okay, I've got my linear notes that I take, or once you get a computer, it's like, okay, I got a bunch of Word documents in Google Docs and maybe a spreadsheet or something like that. But it's really about exploring how your creative mind wants to make connections in different realms. And, I feel like we are, at least our physical makerspace and the energy behind it has been growing fast. And it's like, we don't have time to catch up with ourselves sometimes. We've got Peter being an awesome funder for cool project ideas that are coming through students, and we're keeping that safe learning environment and that culture of innovation and stuff going. But like making a map of how do all the students like learn to use the laser cutter one day if they have access to that, learn to, you know, do some 3D mapping of something, or learn to, you know, go in these different directions, and then learn to access the, you know, the support structure that Center Ice and organizations like One Tree and others have already existing, with mentors who are willing to lean in and say, hey, I'll work with you. As we build that roadmap, I think, you know, we really have an opportunity here to make sure to include all the various aspects of what makes a student feel agency. You know, be able to take an idea or just be willing to walk into either a digital space or a, you know, yeah. So totally agree, and thank you. And as we tackle that culture challenge, everything from the culture of how do we keep that growth mindset culture to also how do we pay attention to the fact that, you know, students who grow up in a, you know, a internet-based, high-speed, you know, kind of like access to computers all the time, and students who grow up, you know, where there's one computer in the house, or maybe the phone is the only way that they interact with things. It's like, that's a cultural difference that we deal with, and recognizing that and calling attention to it is important.
I think even tying in the online makerspace, even having all of the students in our makerspace like map their projects that they're like the students that are working on, seeing the connections between them, and then it could show like, oh, you guys should collaborate, that type of thing.
Yeah, building on a virtual environment for all of those using Makerspaces. So you can say, I'm in Makerspace A, so let's say I'm in One Tree, but my keywords are STEAM, biological science, or whatever it might be. And then we find that there's also somebody in the Makerspace over at T3 doing grow towers, and they're bio, and then maybe they connect. And then you could have somebody in the T3 space that's doing 3D printed CS, and then find out that there's somebody in the virtual space that's coming at it from the computer science theory side or something, and you connect those. So it's a sort of collaborative, like a network of the Makerspace users and projects, and then what are the keywords, so we can connect whether it's the college they're in, the degree program they're in, the scientific or the STEAM keywords, so whether it's science, technology, engineering, maths, arts, or if it's the science itself, so whether it's anthropology on the liberal arts, or if it's geoscience on the physical sciences. Because then, as you say, Shannon, then you can make connections that doesn't require the leaders of the spaces to make the connections, that the individuals using the spaces are making those connections. And then we could have people coming in from outside. The attendees are not all university people, and they say, oh, I wonder which project's going on within an academic environment that are bio-focused or a 3D printer focused. And they just type the keyword and up pops the list of projects that are focused around those topics, irrespective of which space they're in. So not only does it support collaborative connections internally, but also it gives an interface to be a public-facing highlight of the different projects that are going on. So irrespective of which space you're in, those projects can be found and people can connect. So that's an interesting approach to the sort of development of this community of spaces, and how to make that the most effective, so the community members can collaborate, not just the leads of those. So you're reducing the impact that the leads can't sort of make those connections because they're too busy, or they've got some other commitment that's preventing that from happening. So that's an interesting point to bring up, of what could be the next phase of collaborative spaces. I guess I've got a question from my side to you all, is what other questions might you have for each other? I'm glad that sort of this fireside chat type of approach is you're interacting directly with each other, but what questions might you have for each other? Jan, do you have any questions for T3 or Nathan? That would be one question. And then the other one is, how can the statewide entrepreneurial community help your Makerspaces, and just Makerspaces in general? Either is it promotion, is it events, is it problem sets, bringing those problem sets into you to work upon. So my two questions is, do you have anything for each other, and how can the community as a whole grow your space and also grow makerspaces across Alaska in general?
Well, in answer to the first question, again, I'm just sort of wowed by how the three makerspaces that you're just choosing today, how we all together begin to form a community. And so listening to Nathan, I'm thinking how for years now, we've wanted to do a lot more to get our program on the computer, onto, to really connect it with people. And we're just too busy with stuff. Trees are a lot to work with. They're always a lot to work with, and we need your help. And with Adam, as Adam knows, we're just so excited about T3 Alliance and Upward Bound and the design challenges that it's just beautiful to watch. And I have such a clearer sense now of from watching the video today of how it all fits together, and this idea of a network of makerspaces, which I think the One Tree team would love to be a part of in so many ways. So there's not a whole lot of content in what I've said so far, but my questions, I guess one thing I would like is if it would be possible for us to tour each other's makerspaces, but in an open way, so that we bring with us some of our partners, some of the people that are already working in our spaces. Because I think what's key to everything that we do is everything is built on relationships of trust. And those relationships take a long time to develop, but we all have them. And so to be able to kind of cross fertilize, pollinate with each other by bringing some of our people to your spaces and become a wider community here in Fairbanks, and then with the other makerspaces across the state, because we know that just during Startup Week, there are other makerspace events going on. So how could Center Ice help? You're doing a great job in providing funding or pointing the way to where we could go look for funding, and giving us a lot of feedback on our ideas and encouragement. And just keep it up and keep those Alaska Fellows coming, I'm thinking, because it seems to me that all of our makerspaces, I'm not sure about yours, Nathan, but I know that One Trees is so lucky to have been working with the fellows. So ways that we can find out about other collaborations that may feed into makerspaces as the Alaska Fellows have, that would be another, just grow the community, always grow the community. And I just want to say that, we're lucky to have this embodied place here on campus, but it's really about sharing across with people who may not be able to come to our places, but they can share our space, our ideas, and share with us, because it's always a multiple directional conversation.
Perfect. Thanks, Jan. I like the open house makerspace day sort of type of approach, but we'll need to work out how to facilitate that under the current environment we're in, but ways to do that such that we can all virtually tour our spaces and be able to interact in addition to seeing the excellent work going on in those videos. Question to then, question to Nathan, Shannon, and Adam is sort of how can both us within the centralized program where Kevin and I are located, but just statewide in general. I saw Erin Backer highlighting of Super Fab Lab type of work that she's doing with the Cook Inlet Tribal Council, where there's these types of spaces going on broader than the university environment that we're highlighting, those based within the University of Alaska Fairbanks today. How can the sort of wider entrepreneurial community, whether it be private industries, whether it be federal organizations, Alaska Native organizations, how can we as a community help makerspace growth across the state of Alaska? And I know that's a very big philosophical statement to make, but maybe Adam, you might have something to add to that, given your and I know you've got 5 minutes, but given your connections to Upward Bound T3 and the Innovation Hub work that I know is going on.
So this one is really near and dear to my heart, and what Peter's organization helped us address. The Upward Bound program is restricted funding for 160 students around Alaska that we are able to serve with Makerspaces. And the students who work at UAF's Makerspace are primarily working there in order to support students around Alaska who are working on cool projects. But Alaska has thousands of students, and what Peter's funding for our seed fund that we came in last year allowed us to, in those different communities, open the doors so that equipment that was in a makerspace was accessible by all the students in the school. So that paradigm shift is huge. But on the issue of how can our communities get supported, or how can the community support us, I often ask the question, where's the money coming from? Because as Jan knows, as everybody who's been in a grant funded or in a program like this, we have to go back to what are the deliverables and what will we tasked with funding. If my dream world happened, there'd be enough funding out there that we could build these kind of maker spaces across the state of Alaska and have opportunities where we allow those entrepreneurs, those creative individuals, and it could be anything from a fisherman in Southeast Alaska who knows how to really engineer their boat well, to a petroleum engineer who knows how to, help solve problems in underground, seismic monitoring stuff. But all of those professionals who have a gift to give back need some pathway in order to, access this group. And while I'm watching, Cooking on Tribal Foundation, Alaska, there's some for-profit maker spaces in different places, the UAF Upward Bound one, the ones that are run by, the Geophysical Institute and their library up there. All of those ones, we connect with each other individually, but thinking of how do we structure our funding so that it, aligns with itself and makes actually a common, structure. So somebody who comes in doesn't feel just overwhelmed and confused, but yet, hey, I'm in a safe environment. I know how I can give of myself to make this a better place. So that's 3 minutes.
Thank you, Adam, for that. And actually, something that came up, and Nathan, if you've got something, I just want to highlight something that came up in the Q&A from Mariah is there an online platform that highlights all of the active makerspaces in Alaska? And this was a discussion back in February, if you remember, those that came to our forum within the university, of a map within the university environment that highlights the makerspaces in a virtual interactive map of the university. You can move your mouse over the spaces and highlight the ducking room that T3's in. You can highlight Jan's, Nathan's, yours could be the Nook area, or it could be virtually hovering across the whole university because it is a virtual setting. And there's others that Adam highlighted. And then the same thing could be done statewide. Erin's one at the Cook Inlet Tribal Council highlighting, you move the mouse over a part of the state and it brings up a pop-up of the spaces, but each of those individual spaces maintains their own virtual presence. So if you're highlighting the eCampus one, you click on it and you go to Nathan's makerspace. You click on the logo for One Tree and you go to the One Tree website, or you click on the logo for the T3 at the university and you go to Adam and the space that is going on within the Duckering Bilking University. So therefore, this interactive map is just keeping up to date with what's going on. So it's contacting everybody and saying, hey, anything new you want to show, but each individual organization is responsible for their own online presence. So you're not having to maintain every single, but you say title, product, like one paragraph and few keywords. And it's an interactive, you can even make it static for those low bandwidth locations, but some form of map that highlights statewide what's going on. So if you're in South Central, or if in the Southeast, or if you're in Fairbanks in the interior, or Utiavik, or Seward Peninsula, you can go in and say, oh, is the one in Nome, is the one in Utiavik, is the one in Arctic Village, is the one in Shishmaref, is the one in Metlakatla, wherever you're based, and you can go, what's the closest to me? And you go and contact them. And I think that could be a really powerful map that can then be demonstrated and shown when presentations are going on, highlighted to individuals in those areas, but you're not sort of having to control and manage the details. So anyway, that's just my final thought. I know it's something that's been brought up in the past, but again, it's how to support that and how to fund that. And then Nathan, one last comment from you before we wrap up.
Yeah, and it's really bringing it all together, is that kind of relational backbone in the virtual world to all of these physical spaces and resources takes time, talent, and money. And that's definitely where there's not currently, while there are structures that perpetuate these physical institutions, the digital ones to connect them and give them a backbone is not necessarily in existence yet. So that's something to think about.
Exactly, and it does come down to time and funds, but maybe the return on the investment of something like that is beneficial, and just working out how to get that supported and up and running. And the highlight from Erin was an Alaska Fellows could work on that. It could be a Fellows project, but again, it comes down to the commitments that they have and working out if this is something that might be maintained by a separate organization rather than the individual fellows. But on that note, as we wrap up, I just want to say thanks to our panelists today. Nathan Femstra from the eCampus program, Jan Dorf from One Tree Alaska, Jan Miller and Adam Lau from the T3 Makerspace T3 Alliance, Kevin, my co-host from Center Ice. So we're part of the Alaska Startup Week. So as we move into Wednesday and Thursday, you can see the different events that are occurring. All being well, you're seeing my slide share. And you can see there's quite a lot of events still online virtually. So do go to the website shown there and you'll be able to see other events going on, both based out of Fairbanks and also other parts of the state. But just wanted to say thank you again, part of Alaska Startup Week. So AK Startup Week, thanks to our attendees and our panelists.